The myth we're trying to bust is if you save electricity by turning off the lights as opposed to keeping it on when you leave. You forgot to turn the lights off.
What do you mean turning off the lights doesn't save power? I've been getting yelled at for years. How can you tell me this?
Well, you see here, Ian, when you turn on a light bulb, there's a peak, a spike of current that levels out over time, showing a constant current. But when you turn on and off a light bulb, you have the constant current, followed by a steady state, a dip when you turn off the light, followed by another peak and another steady state.
So when I leave my room for 10 minutes, will it really save energy?
Well, you see, Nicole, this graph is time dependent. So depending on how long you leave the lights off for, let's say you were gone for 10 minutes compared to 1 minute, you'd have a dip, a bigger dip in your graph. And so what we're trying to find here, let's say this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. If 1 and 2 are greater than 3, that essentially means you're wasting energy. However, if 1 and 2 are less than 3, you're actually saving energy. So it all depends on how long you leave the lights off for.
Guys, this still doesn't make any sense to me. We need to test this.
This sounds like a job for the IO lab.
So to use the IO lab to measure our current peaks, we have created a setup with an inductor. Current will pass through this coil, causing the coil to create a magnetic field. We can measure the magnetic field by attaching the IO lab to our inductor. So when we turn the light on, we should be able to measure our peak. So originally we set up our inductor coil on this part of the wire, but we quickly realized as our experiment failed that this part of the wire has constant current because the switch is here. So really the spike in current we were looking for would occur on this part of the wire. So we set up a new inductor. Also, we changed our IO lab setup to measure current because that is what we're really looking for. So we put a resistor on here. So now let's hope this works. Now let's see what happens when we flip the switch. Okay, that didn't work, so let's try to measure voltage instead using the same setup. And flip the switch. So interestingly, we got voltage data but not current data. So we went back to the drawing board and figured that this must be because this wire has current going both forward and backwards in a circuit. So the way induction works is when the current passes through our magnetic coil, it creates a magnetic field, and we were trying to measure the back EMF from that magnetic field. But since there's two currents running through our coil, the currents are interfering with each other, causing us to get the mixed data.
So our first method of induction did not work, so we're going to try scaling it down using a circuit board and a battery. Now we'll measure the current the way we originally were.
Let's take a closer look. Finally, we got the graph we were looking for, the peak and leveling off in current.
Let's simulate turning the lights on and off.
So you can see the two peaks and the two leveling off. Now that we have done our experiments and collected some data, we need to do some calculations. What we are looking for is the energy used by the peak when you turn on a light bulb. So, we know that energy is the integral of power, and power is voltage times current. Our voltage is constant from our 1.5 volt battery, and our current is measured by our IO lab. So we can pull voltage out because it's constant, and then we just have the integral of current, which our IO lab has collected for us.
Here's the graph that we use to determine the energy that is being consumed. On the x-axis we have the time, and then on the y-axis we have the current. We used an IOLab with an analog setting, so this voltage is wrong, it should be amps. So to determine the energy, we calculated the area under the curve. And so here's the whole energy that's being consumed, but we're only concerned about this area that is from up here. So we subtracted the bottom energy out.
So our IOLab has calculated the integral of our current under this whole curve for us. So now we want to just get this top part. So the total is 0.07 amp seconds, and the bottom portion is just 0.05 amp seconds. So we get a total of 0.02
0.5
amp seconds, which we now plug into our original equation. We know our battery is 1.5 volts. And that gives us 0.03 watts seconds, or 0.03 joules.
So now we're going to determine the amount of time it takes before you start saving energy. To do that, we're going to compare the energy of when you first turn the light on to the amount of energy that is saved when you turn the light off. So as we calculated, the amount of energy it takes when we turn the light on is 0.03 joules. And so we're going to set that equal to the amount of energy when it's off. So we'll do 0.03 joules, and we'll divide that by the constant current that is passed through the light. And when we divide that, we get 0.5 seconds. And one thing to note is this is a small number, and it's scaled down because we only use this circuit board, so it's not as big as like an actual light would be. Now we're going to compare the LED light and see if we get similar results.
As you can see from this graph of the LED light, there's no peak or spike when you turn the light on. It just stays at the steady state. For this reason, it never makes sense to not turn the LED light off as you leave the room. Also from this graph, you can notice that the amps output is much smaller than the incandescent bulb. This shows us that LEDs are greener and more efficient than incandescent bulbs, and for this reason, they can be turned on and left on for long periods of time.
So we initially wanted to do this experiment with 3 different types of lights: fluorescent, incandescent, and LED. The graph we got from the LED experiment showed that the current stayed at the initial peak even after it ran for a long amount of time. We think this is because LED lights are said to be environmentally friendly, which means that they can run for a longer amount of time without using as much electricity. Ultimately, you should turn off the lights every time you leave the room.
Turn up the lights in here, baby. Extra bright, I want y'all to see this.